So today I want to talk about life force energy, and life force energy is what fuels our cells, supports our thoughts and emotions, and connects us to source. It's the source of source in us, and I want to talk about how that impacts every level of our existence, from the physical to the mental, emotional to the spiritual, and how things can get, when life force energy isn't moving, it can cause problems, and how we can promote the movement of life force energy in our body so that we can change all of those areas that it's connected to, which is every level of our life. So I'm Jay Eaker from the BioSoul Integration Center in Louisville, Colorado, and I help soul-led people to embody their soul's gifts so that they can share those gifts on the planet and do what it is that they came here to do. So if you could please subscribe to my YouTube channel here, or like it, or share it, or leave a comment. I always answer the comments, so feel free to ask a comment, or ask a question or make a comment in the comment section. And as well as anywhere else that you might find this video, you might find it in a podcast form. The BioSoul Integration Podcast can be found wherever you do your podcasting, and all the social media platforms as well. So like it, share it, do all that social stuff wherever you see it. I would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. So life force energy, right? Excuse me. It goes by a bunch of different names in different cultures. Everyone's heard of chi, probably. There's also ki. There's prana. Those are the kind of the big ones, and there are some other more obscure ones. Innate intelligence, that's kind of a word that comes out of the chiropractic world that is the equivalent to life force energy, I feel like. And that's kind of what life force energy is. It's a living, flowing kind of intelligence. And it supplies the intelligence that supports and maintains in existence our physical being, but also supports our and creates our mental thoughts, the thought world, the emotion, creates the emotions that we experience as humans, and of course through the life force energy in our bodies, we have an uplink to the spiritual source, the part of us that is spirit, a spiritual being. And it's not like on some level, life force energy can be maybe sort of an esoteric term to some, but the truth is everyone has experienced it. If you might have experienced it while or after making love, that sort of like buzz in the body that you might experience, after a significant experience of making love, for instance, or some people access it or experience it, after having worked out. Again, that just sort of like buzz in the body, or just from any sort of significant maybe some experience that was thrilling, I don't know, riding a roller coaster or something. Afterwards you feel sort of energized and maybe more aware of your body and aware of your body kind of buzzing, or a scintillating something, moving in your body. It's natural for life force energy to flow and circulate in our bodies, in our beings. And if it's not, it kind of creates this sort of friction. I have some analogies that might speak to that. Let's say that, you just kind of think of the amount of pressure, the amount of force there is in like a river. All of that water moving in a certain direction, and let's say we sort of stick something in the middle of the river, and the water starts to kind of like, push up against that thing that's stuck in the river. Maybe there's like a pylon or something in the middle of the river that's anchored sort of to the bottom, and all of that water and all of that pressure sort of impending on it, impacting, excuse me, on that object. And you can kind of imagine or have a sense of the immense pressure that's created. Well, likewise, our bodies, there's an immense amount of force actually in these bodies. And if the life force energy that's created by the life force energy that's moving through us, and if that life force energy gets impeded, you can kind of get a felt sense of the sort of pressure that builds up. And that pressure is what kind of manifests itself as some of the physical, mental, emotional, symptoms or problems that we encounter. Another sort of example or analogy is if you can think like of, let's say, if you picture everyone sort of driving around with their brakes on, they're driving their car with their brakes on at the same time, and which is kind of what we're doing in a way, a lot of us. There is this friction, there is this pressure kind of in our systems, but it's been there for so long that we've kind of gotten used to it. And it's kind of like people driving around with their parking brake half engaged or something maybe, and they've just been doing that forever and they've just gotten used to it. But if everyone was doing that, you'd see signs of that kind of around. People's tires would be smoking, and if they don't attend to it for long enough, there would be flames, or at least it would just wear down and at the very least it would just wear down your brakes, right? So that's kind of an analogy of what we are doing. We're all sort of running around with the parking brake kind of halfway engaged or something, with this friction in our systems. And there's a manifestation of that in whether it's back pain, whether it's emotional issues, whether it's physiology that's not working the way it should, whether our body chemistry is off, things like that. So, or sort of spiritual, signs that we're not connected to ourselves, to our spiritual selves, inability to sort of be able to manifest yourself in a way that's in alignment with who you really are. That can manifest itself often in relationship or in career or important things like that. So if this life force energy is not flowing, it can get stuck in our bodies, and whether it's back pain or physiology, body chemistry that's not working like it's supposed to, or mental emotional issues like depression or anxiety, or spiritual things, lack of, feeling connected to a power that's greater than you, and not being able to sort of manifest the part of you that is that spiritual part on the planet, usually through your purpose, usually through your career, things like that. So how does life force energy get impeded in the first place in us, which is an obvious next question, and a good question. In order to answer that question, though, I want to sort of I want to lay out some background, which is, how life force energy kind of shows up in our bodies to begin with. So it's my sort of sense that from working with thousands of people in the particular way that I do, that when we are conceived, that there is a sort of energetic matrix or energetic lattice. There's like some sort of a space that opens up in the space-time continuum, a gateway between the sort of physical world and the spiritual world, I would say. And there's there's an energetic matrix or lattice that sort of fills that space. And that energetic matrix or that energetic lattice is what tells heart cells to turn into heart cells, and what tells this cell to turn into brain cells, and what tells this cell to turn into a leg bone cell. That's the intelligence that tells those cells where they need to go so that they can build these bodies, first of all. But there's also, and we're very aware, of course, of this physical part. So that's one layer of life force energy. There's life force energy that's sort of a bandwidth, a certain frequency or a bandwidth that is designed to maintain this physical matter, to stick it together in a certain way that creates this physical body, right? But our body doesn't really end there. There are, again, a frequency or a bandwidth of life force energy that is really about our emotions, that sort of, is the channel that our emotions come from. Then there's also a channel or a frequency or a bandwidth of life force energy that's about our mental capacity, our ability to think. And then there are other layers that are more about, the spiritual parts of us, the parts of us that are sort of like connected to everyone and everything. And those layers, those different frequencies, they, exist in the fields that interpenetrate each cell in our bodies and extend, out from our bodies, around our bodies. That, again, might sound woo-woo to some, but those fields of energy around us can and have been, measured. So science does support the fact that there are these different fields of energy around our body. And again, that information, the intelligence, the information that's contained in those fields is what, supports us to be whole. If that life force energy is able to move and circulate, and it should sort of circulate, there's a way in which we're sort of downloading information from the spirit world, if you will, from source, and there's a way that we're uploading information from the planet. And that information should sort of come into our bodies and circulate between source and circulate between the earth. And if that's the case, if that's happening, then there's a way in which we're more whole. However, there are things that sort of impede that fragment that movement. One of the things that develops when we're in the womb is what I like to call our primal brain. And this is the part of the most basic layer of our nervous system, which comes online about 2 to 4 weeks, after conception. And what that part of our nervous system does, our primal brain, is that it's just feeling into our environment, and we're gathering information about how to do this human thing through this sort of direct exchange of information on that sort of energetic level. We're feeling into the people around us and the culture around us on this sort of relating to that on this energetic level. And because part of the information that gets sort of uploaded, the human information that gets uploaded, is this sense that we rely on the people around us for our survival. And so consequently, there is a kind of innate urge to sort of fit in with the crowd, to fit in with the herd around us, right? And so as our nervous system sort of that primal brain feels into the people around us and senses the subtle ways that they have fragmented themselves, that they've judged parts of themselves and pushed parts of themselves away, made judgments about certain parts of themselves, that not that it's their fault, but it's no one's fault. They picked it up from their parents, and they from their parents. So there's just something that got started somehow in the human race where we sort of separate ourselves and fragment ourselves. And so this primal part, since we want to fit in with the people around us, we naturally adopt that as well. And it's kind of like, and here's another analogy. It's like, you know how you have a magnet? And if you break a magnet, when I was a kid growing up, we used to have these magnets that, probably a lot of people don't know this, they were big, huge pill-shaped magnets. And what you would do is you would put those magnets in the stomach of an animal, a cow, because cows sometimes would eat wire. If wire was in their food, they wouldn't know it, and they just eat it and swallow it. So you'd put these magnets in their stomach, and the magnets would, you know, gather up the wire so it didn't move around, so it didn't cause problems. But anyway, every once in a while I would break one of these, I'd drop it and it would break. And when you break a magnet, all of a sudden it creates a new sort of, each section has its own complete sort of energy field, magnetic field or whatever. And suddenly the place where the magnets broke, physically they fit together, but magnetically they don't. They repel each other. If you try to you break a magnet and then you try to stick those parts back together, they repel. And so I feel like, kind of like we're like a bag of broken magnets. If you had a bag of broken magnets, you'd have all these magnets and these pieces and parts, and some parts would sort of be like glomming together and, you know, kind of in harmony, and other parts would automatically be sort of, you know, repelling each other. And so I kind of feel like we're like that. We're like a bag of magnets. There are parts of us that we've judged as bad and parts of us that we've judged as good, and we're all fragmented. And you know, so there's this just like the pressure that builds up if there's something in the water, just like the pressure that I mentioned that builds up if you have your parking brake half engaged, it creates this friction. And that impeded life force energy separation in our system creates this friction in our bodies, and that can show up as back pain, mental emotional issues, organ systems that aren't working like they're supposed to, body chemistry issues, spiritual issues, just feeling like you don't belong, or feeling like you're, you know, having a sense of I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, not being able to manifest your authentic self on the earth, being separated from source. So in that way, we are like a bag of broken magnets. But interestingly, in all those problems, the pain, the disharmony in the body, the friction in the body, that has an interesting way of drawing our attention. And so there's a strange way in which it seems to me that the things that have happened to us, the things that cause the friction in our body, whether that is the stuff that gets transferred through our lineage, the stuff that we picked up when we were in the womb and when we were small children, the things that happen to us along the way that also further reinforce the separation in us and the friction in our bodies and beings, that somehow that stuff is all perfect, because bound up life force energy is potential energy. It has the potential to do work. And I've found through my office, through the work that I do here at my office, that if people can experience that bound up life force energy through the lens of their heart, and through awareness, through kind awareness, that awareness, and especially kind awareness, contains like an enzyme that catalyzes that bound up life force energy and extracts the wisdom out of it. Extracts the wisdom out of it. And so that life force, that bound up life force energy, contains the information that we need to to move towards our authentic selves. And so there's a way that pain, symptoms, problems are actually the solution. They contain the information, the wisdom that we need to be able to access our more evolved self. So that this weird kind of way, this kind of full circle way in which I just feel like, you know, in the beginning, we sort of like stood back and we were kind of like, I got to see the whole thing. And we were kind of like, okay, you're going to go from being this sort of unlimited being that's fully aware of, you know, all of space and time to this being that's very limited in these physical bodies, very vulnerable. You're not going to have a view of the whole picture. You're going to have to sort of like wander around in the dark. That's how you're going to have to figure this out. And there are certain things that are going to happen to you, certain things that you're going to experience. You're going to be born inside of a certain culture. You're going to be born inside of a certain family, and that's going to create a certain level and a certain particular kind of friction and potential energy in your system. Then you're going to encounter certain things. You're going to have accidents and hurts and traumas and things like that that are going to create a certain kind of and reinforce a certain kind of separation to one part of you, your primal brain survival part of you, but that also creates, ironically, the exact kind of potential energy in you that at some point you'll have the opportunity, at different points along the way, you'll have the opportunity to catalyze. And that energy will be the energy that sort of drives you towards your authentic self, towards fulfilling your purpose, ironically. So there's this weird way in which that tension, that friction, the stuff that's going wrong is actually contains the solution to the problem. So the question is, how can we, and there's a way in which life is always nudging that stuff to the surface. If energy is bound up in our system, life is kind of just like the river pushing against the thing that's standing in the water. Life is constantly pinging on the bound up energy in our system, wanting it to come into consciousness. It's pinging on the unconscious bound up energy in our system so that it starts to come into consciousness. Life wants it to come into consciousness. Life wants it to come into consciousness so that you can do the thing that you came here to do. So there's this constant pressure for that to come into consciousness, and for it to come into fruition, for that potential to sort of come into fruition all the time. And we can, whether we're sort of engaged in this process or not, if we're not, often it just hurts worse. But when we realize that this is happening, there's ways that we can help that. We can speed it up, we can smooth it out. And as I mentioned before, I think our attention is a key part of that. Bringing our attention to the sensations in our body is a key part of that. So awareness of this is key. So there are things that you can do to help that, to make the decision to go along with what's happening, go along with this way that life is constantly trying to push things to the surface. And there's ways that you can, first of all, what are the sort of fundamental things that create life force energy, or that are key to having life force energy in a human body? First of all, is good fuel, good food. Second of all is breath. And third is motion. These are kind of, I would say, the fundamentals of life force energy in a human body. And so anything that you can do, obviously you want to eat good food, and you want to get breath moving, and you want to get movement. And so exercise is awesome, right? That's why exercise is so awesome. It's been proven to have an effect on all sorts of things that are troubling people, especially mental, emotional, issues, right? And that's because, I would say, in my experience, that's because exercise moves life force energy. It prompts life force energy to move. It prompts us to be connected to our bodies, and it prompts life force energy to move. Now, I would say, you know, the exercise, kind of regular exercise, working out in the gym, that's kind of one level of exercise. But there's another level that's more conducive to the awareness piece, I would say, and that's things like yoga, for instance. Moving and breathing and being aware of your body is key, and to the extent that you can add more of the awareness piece, it's going to be more powerful, and it's going to actually sort of actualize, it's going to catalyze the bound up energy in our systems and extract the wisdom from it. You know, yoga, qigong, things like that. And then of course there's, you know, there are healing modalities. There's getting help specifically from someone who can help you move life force energy in your body. So energy workers, Reiki, you know, there's just a whole bunch of systems out there, energy sort of healing systems. I think I'd be remiss if I did not mention the work that I do here at my office, BioSoul Integration, which is a kind of energy healing, spiritual healing, embodied energy. You know, it's body-centered energy healing. It's it's about embodied spiritual healing, you know. So it's really about integrating the physical with the spiritual, which is what is trying to happen in all of this, ultimately. So, yeah, so the big part of understanding life force energy is awareness. That's kind of the biggest thing around life force energy, is awareness. And the best, fastest way that we can do that is sort of commit to bringing our attention to the sensations in our bodies. Part of what happens with this primal brain is that when our nervous system goes into defense, or where it picks up on separation and those around us, and it wants to adopt that pattern, it says, okay, we're going to separate ourselves from this part, and we're not going to look at it. So their attention gets pulled away from parts of ourselves, which is insanity on some level, because we carry this whole thing around all the time. But key to that is sort of making the choice to bring your attention to the sensations in your body. And that's what that's what symptoms are doing anyway. So you can shortcut that whole thing, pain, symptoms, problems in life. You can shortcut the whole thing by choosing to bring your energy to the sensations in your body. Eckhart Tolle, in his book A New Earth, said that the best thing that you can do for your life is to have part of your attention resting on the sensations in your body at all times. And so, you know, that again helps to sort of integrate the physical, the mental, emotional, the spiritual parts of us. And in that way you can you get the most out of the life force energy that's present in your body and your being. Okay, so I think that's it. If you feel like this has been interesting, please like it, please share it, please pass it along to those who you think might be interested. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I look forward to helping you express more life. Have a great day.